today, I want to talk about how developing your child or the children you teach or children who are in your care, how developing their emotional intelligence can alleviate their mental health issues or mental health illness. So to recap, as I said yesterday, whatever's going on within your thoughts affects your feelings affect your emotions. Your emotions are the energy of the feelings, and that creates you to act out or behave in a certain way. I want to share some case studies with you because I can't exactly show you the process that we use in our EQ Academy or what we teach parents and teachers how to do this, but I do want to share some case studies with you so you can see just how effective it is. So I'm going to share some of my own case studies, but I also want to share some of our tutors' case studies. So also, if you watch the special broadcast that I did last week about Bianca, I mentioned about, speaking about mental health, and I told the story of Bianca and how she'd been diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. Her mom wanted, or should I say the school had recommended that she went to a special school. The doctor had recommended that she go onto Ritalin because she couldn't sit still. But she came for EQ lessons. She came and did the course with me. She was 9 years old, and we discovered that she was uncomfortable in her own skin because a maths teacher, had told her she was stupid. So as a 9-year-old, she received that message and created the perception that she was stupid with everything. She based her entire personality, who she was, on that one thing that teacher had said. So I helped her to understand that that wasn't true. And just because she wasn't good at one thing didn't mean that she wasn't good at everything else. But anyway, the result of that was that she was able to go to a normal school. She never went on to Ritalin. She didn't have a problem with ADD or ADHD. She just had a problem with feeling that there was something wrong with her, which made her really fidgety and uncomfortable in her own skin. So I did describe that in detail. So do go and check out for that Facebook Live, but I just wanted to quickly mention it in case you missed it. So I want to share a few stories from our tutor in Jeffreys Bay in South Africa, Lumen. And Lumen has been running the program now in her school for 2 years, nearly 2 years. Was it more than 2 years, Lumen? I can't remember now. It's either 1.5 years or 2.5 years. But she's got a nursery school, so she works with children before they go to big school. So in South Africa, it's a little bit different. Children generally go to school in South Africa in the year that they turn 7. Which I love because I don't believe that children are emotionally ready to go to school any earlier than that. So this is a preschool. In the UK, children go to school at the age of 4 already, which I'm sorry, but I just don't agree with it because children aren't emotionally ready. Their emotional brain has just switched on. And the way they teach kids in school today is very much, they suppress a lot of the right-hand side of their brain, the creativity, the imagination. But anyway, we'll leave that for another topic. So this is from Lumen School, where she teaches nursery, which is preschool in South Africa. And she told me about the story of this one little girl, Lizanne, 6 years old, and she's the youngest of her siblings. She'd been practicing emotional intelligence for a few months and had been implementing the 4-step plan when feeling emotional. So what Lumen did was she introduced a 4-step plan for children in her school when they felt emotional. And her 4-step plan involved breathing. So when they felt emotional, they had to first breathe. And that's one of the first things we teach in our lesson plans as well. Then to pray, then to make a plan, and then to ask for help. So what Lumen has done is she's taken our lesson plans and our teaching and she's adapted it for her school, because Lumen School is a Christian school. So they include prayer in their 4-step plan. But anyway, so Lizanne had been practicing this at the school for a couple of months. She was 6 years old. And one afternoon, she overheard her older brother complaining to their mom that he had a sore tummy, that he had sweaty palms and was feeling stressed about his exams. So Lizanne went up to her mom and she said to her mom that she thinks that her brother has anxiety, because she remembered about the symptoms in one of the lessons they did in one of the books that we use called Wilson Dares the Dark, which is all about helping children to overcome a fear of the dark. And she said she remembered that Wilson had experienced similar symptoms, and that was because he was feeling anxious. So Lazan promptly went up to her brother, explained to him. Now, her brother was 5 years older than her. So this is a 6-year-old and a brother who was 11. She said to him that what he is feeling is that he's feeling anxious, and then proceeded to help him through his anxiety using the 4 steps that she had learned at school. I mean, honestly, isn't that the most incredible story? Lazan's brother was able to overcome his anxiety and write his exams with a positive mindset. I mean, I just thought this was just the most incredible story. You know, I remember in a webinar, I think it was last year, Lumen was also telling us that at the end of the year, how the parents had shared so many stories, how these little kids were taking what they were learning at school and teaching their parents how to be emotionally intelligent. I mean, isn't that phenomenal? Where a little child is actually the person who is changing the way the parents and their household and their siblings are expressing and dealing with their emotions. It's just absolutely incredible. We can learn so much from little children if we allow ourselves to be taught by the younger generation. So that was a really cool story. And then another story she told us, she said that Lumen said that 2 5-year-olds, they took a taxi to school every morning, and they walked into Lumen's office the one day and said they have to speak to her. It's really important. They need to speak to her about a serious topic. And the kids then politely explained to her that some older children on the taxi had been bullying them and calling them names and being really mean to them. And these 2 5-year-olds just stood up for themselves. They asserted themselves, and they said they know that they are special, they know that they belong, and they would like them to stop calling them names. And they then went on to ask Lumen if she would please speak to the taxi driver or the headmaster to help prevent them from bullying them in the future. Isn't that incredible? So instead of 5-year-olds, because you can imagine as a 5-year-old, right? A 5-year-old tends to believe what an older person, an older child, an older adult, whoever it is that's bigger than them, they tend to believe what that person is. Because when you're little, you feel like what somebody else who's bigger or older than you is more relevant or valid, you know, what they have to say. And that these 5-year-olds could immediately deflect that and say, I'm not listening to you. I'm not taking on board what you say, because I know that I belong and I know that I'm special in my own right. Isn't that amazing how emotionally intelligence can help these children turn things around so quickly at such a young age? I mean, I just love it. So a couple of stories that I would like to share with the kids that I've worked with. I worked with these identical twins, came to my classes, came and did the whole course with me. And the biggest thing that frustrated them was that their own mom, could not tell the difference between them. Now, I have to admit that the first time they came, I struggled as well. You know, I was looking at them and going, oh my goodness, which one is which? But my daughter actually pointed it out, and she was a teenager at the time, and she said to me, Mom, just look at their faces. The one child's face is rounder than the other one. So I learned how to identify which twin was which twin. But basically, what had come out with these kids, her mom sent them to me because she found them to be uncooperative. She found that they weren't listening to her. They weren't respecting her. They were disruptive. They were sometimes not communicative at all. And as we went through the lessons, I then discovered that the reason was that these twins were so frustrated and so irritated and almost feeling like they were insignificant and unimportant because their mom could not tell the difference between the two of them. So I was able to identify that, but through the lessons, I was able to help them to understand that it had nothing to do with them not being significant, not being important. It was just something that their mom had not learned how to identify the difference between them yet, and then how they could help their mom to be able to differentiate between the two of them. So they helped their mom understood, they then changed their whole perception, and all of those complaints that the mom had about the two of them not respecting her, being disruptive, not communicating, all of those issues then fell away the minute the twins learned just how significant and important they were in their own right. Another story I want to share with you is about two gangster boys. Now, these were, it was a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old that came to me. Their mom was really, really worried because she said that, you know, obviously you're scared when your kids are in a gang, right? Because, I mean, it's so dangerous and it's so difficult to, I think you feel so helpless and hopeless because you don't want your child to get hurt or to be caught up with the wrong friends. Anyway, the two boys came to me, we did the whole course with them, and I uncovered that the reason that they were in a gang was because they were scared. They feared for their life. Their perception was that unless they were in a gang, they could not protect themselves. They would not be significant. They would not have the power to be themselves unless they were in this gang where there was numbers and where they could assert themselves. Now, what is really interesting about gangs is that when you look back at all the human needs that we all have, and we all share 6 human needs, and this is one of the aspects that we cover in our emotional intelligence training. But when you look at all the human needs, we all need to feel significant and we all need to feel important. Those are 2 of the human needs. Now, in gangs, they have found that the quickest way to feel important and to feel significant is through violence. And that's why a lot of people join gangs. A lot of people join them so they can have a sense of belonging. They need to feel that they're part of something. They need that sense of importance and significance. And this is such an interesting topic because it doesn't only pertain to youngsters who want to be in gangs, but in adults as well. And you'll find that this often changes, for instance, when children leave the home. You have that empty nest syndrome, and suddenly parents are going, I don't feel needed anymore. I don't feel significant anymore, or I don't feel important anymore because my children don't need me anymore. Same thing happens when you change jobs, when you retire, when a project ends, when you are retrenched, when you are fired, because suddenly you feel a sense of vulnerability. You feel like you've lost control over your life. You've lost power. And so to get that back is usually through feeling important and significant. And all of us need to feel that way. So with these boys, when I showed them and helped them through developing their emotional intelligence, that they didn't need to belong to a gang to be significant, to feel important, they suddenly left the gang. Their mom said it was such a weird thing because they even started helping around at home. She said one of the boys started singing. Another one, she said he started cleaning up his room. He even unpacked all his drawers and his wardrobe and repacked, reorganized. And this is something that happens a lot. And it's so interesting. And I remember working with a company and the boss said to me, because I trained all the staff, and the boss said to me, I don't know what is going on, but suddenly my staff are more organized, they're more communicative, they're at peace with themselves. And the wife, who also came to me from that organization, said to me, I don't know what's the matter with me, because before I used to be such a clutter bunny. I cluttered, I was disorganized, I used to procrastinate, I could never have my house all neat and tidy, and suddenly all of that went away. And it's just so interesting that when we become organized within our minds, when we start feeling at peace with ourselves, when we start liking ourselves, the results will not only show in your personality, in your body, it won't just be evident to other people, but suddenly your environment starts changing as well. You start clearing up, organizing, being neater, being tidier. It's just the most amazing thing, you know, how our symptoms and the results of when we are not, or when we think we're not in charge of our lives, or when we don't feel great about ourselves, you can see that. You can see it in your environment. And it's just so fascinating. What was that thing about messy desk, messy mind, or cluttered desk, cluttered mind? I think it kind of ties in with that old saying. Okay, so one more story I want to tell you, share with you, is with a teenager that I worked with. He was 13 years old. He'd been bullied at school. And before that, he hadn't even been bullied in such a huge way. So I'll tell you the story. So he was a very social child, loved his sport, loved chatting, loved playing with his friends. He loved school. He had very high standards for himself. He always wanted to reach a very high standard. And he set a bar for himself, like a really, really high bar for his marks, because he's almost like got this, his future set out for him. You know, he knows what he wants to do when he grows up. He knows he wants to go to university. So he works very hard on his grades. Anyway, something happened at school. A teacher was very mean to him. She said some bad things to him. Sorry, I was just distracted for a second there. Something moved out the window. A teacher said something really mean to him, and he became very emotional. This teacher shouted at him, screamed at him in the classroom, embarrassed him. He felt humiliated, and straight away he went away feeling really bad and uncomfortable. Now, when this happens, when you humiliate a child in public, you humiliate them in front of other people, it generally makes them feel really uncomfortable. It makes them feel embarrassed. It makes them feel a sense of shame, which is one of the worst emotions that anybody can feel. And it made him feel like he just wanted to be invisible. But what happened was he made himself invisible because he didn't ever want to feel like that again. But he wanted to be visible because he was a social person. So we had to work with him to heal from that trauma and to change the way he saw himself, and help him to understand that that teacher's bad behavior was not his fault. It was her. She had just never learned how to actually communicate with people. I mean, so this child had brought it upon himself, try to make himself invisible, which made him feel very sad, very unhappy. It made it made his mom feel very sad, very unhappy. And she was so frustrated. So the more sad, the more frustrated and unhappy she was, the more she spoke about it, and the more it affected him. Because what happened was, eventually, not only did this kid want to be invisible at school because he didn't want to bring that kind of attention to him again, but he then started feeling responsible for his mom's unhappiness, because he said that she felt unhappy from the day on when that happened to him. And obviously from the mom's perspective, she felt hopeless and helpless to change the situation. She tried to work with the school. It didn't change the situation, because what needed to change was the way he viewed himself. Because when you view yourself as, how can I put this? And I know this is quite difficult to explain sometimes how the mind works, but we've got this internal view of ourselves. So think about it this way. If you feel like you're a loser, or you feel like you have no confidence, or you can't do it, or you feel weak, or you feel insignificant, or you feel incapable of doing something, people will pick that up. It's almost like, I've explained this before in other videos, it's like you're giving off a signal. This is who I am. And they pick that up. You know, think back to maybe an incident when you walked into a room and you can see when somebody's confident. You can just see it. It's like a vibe that emanates from them, right? So you want to go and speak to that person who's confident, or the life of the party. You want to be in their company because their energy is so great. And then think about somebody who could be called a wallflower, somebody that's kind of standing up against the wall. They don't want to talk, they're shy, they embarrassed, they self-conscious. Now, for those of us who don't like seeing people suffer that way, maybe we will go and talk to them. but you'll talk to them almost like because you want to help them, because you feel bad for them, because you want to encourage them. But it's a very different feeling, isn't it? Versus going to speak to somebody who's confident in the life of the party. That's like a good energy. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to be in their presence. I want to be in the know. I want to be with them because they're fun and they're vibrant. Versus when you go and speak to somebody who has no confidence, you're doing it more because you're trying to help them. There's that feeling of, oh, shame, or oh, bless, as they say in the UK. Let me go and talk to her or him. Let me help them. So the change, even though, coming back to that mom, even though she had gone to the school and tried to turn the situation around, it didn't turn around until he changed his internal view of himself. Once he healed from that trauma, started feeling differently about himself, started seeing himself differently from the inside out, was he able to change his situation at school. He went back to school this year. He said he was so excited about school. He couldn't wait to be there. He's made new friends. He started playing sports again. He's a complete different child. Okay, so I hope those stories have inspired you. I know it's very difficult for me to explain to you how we do this. As I said, it's a process. We follow a curriculum, a step-by-step plan. But I just wanted to share some of those results with you of how profoundly a person's life can change when they start developing their emotional intelligence. Now, I've got hundreds of stories like that, but I just wanted to pick out a few just so that you could see or get a feeling or get a picture in your mind of how emotional intelligence can change a child's life. So from me, Deborah McPhillamy, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you've been watching this video on one of our pages or on YouTube or on our website, then please make sure that you do join our free group in Facebook, because that's where we answer all your questions. That's where you can find out about more information about emotional intelligence and how you can implement it into your school or into your home. Thank you again for watching. Cheers for now. Bye.